You're on. Thank you.
Good evening. It is December 14th. This is a meeting of the Tucson Borough Budget Committee. We have a quorum, and so we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any public input this evening? Okay, none forthcoming. Review and approval of the November 23rd minutes, which were all received in our packets. Any additions, deletions, changes?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have some words added to what was represented as my comment in item 4.
What might those be?
Beg your pardon? I would like to ask that the statement include a little bit more of what I said, and that would mean that immediately after the word "it's" in the first paragraph, we add the word "unlinear." And then...
I'm sorry, add the word what?
Unlinear. And then at the end, beginning with the word employees, add the words, with respect to common living costs such as home heating, automotive fuels, and food.
All right.
I'm going to object. I think it's a political comment that was made relative to the distribution of funds, and I don't think the Budget Committee is a place for political commentary. It may be appropriate at a selectmen's meeting or something like that, but I don't think it's appropriate at a budget meeting. It has nothing to do with our review of the information supplied.
Well, they are my words. And
Yeah,
I'm
I'm not making a political
Excuse me.
statement, and I don't think you should.
I'm not, and I don't think I'm running for office or anything. I simply want the statement to be meaningful to someone who reads it, and that would be a third party. My comment was that the distribution was a little slight for people who don't make
You
much money.
suggested that it be moved around in terms of...
No, sir, I was asked if I had a solution, and that was my solution, but that was not part of my statement. That's all that
Well,
was.
it was a statement.
So look, it's not political, it does represent what I said, and I think that the record should be accurate with respect to anything that one of the board members says.
I make another recommendation that it be removed, the entire statement. Because it has to, it can be interpreted in different fashions, period.
And then at the end, all these words.
I think by the fact that we acknowledge what you said, I don't necessarily think that we have to have what you want to have in the minutes verbatim.
I think I'd like to make a motion. And
Well,
I'll
then you
read
have-
some words again. And,
One motion on the table.
There's only one motion on the table.
well, this is a motion to amend. And the amendment would be that we add the word unlinear directly in front of the word distribution. And at the end of the sentence, right after the word employees, we say, with respect to common living costs, such as home heating, automotive fuels, and food.
Fine, you've made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
All right, it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I'm not certain how that amendment is different from original motion. And I'm not being confrontational here, I just don't understand how it's different.
Well, I think that, by way of explanation to your comment, a reader of these minutes would see that something was said with regard to the 4.6 COLA, but no one would have any idea what was implied by distribution structure. The discussion that took place was that individuals who make a relatively small amount of money are going to get 4.6% of some number, and that number is considerably smaller than people who make much more money. So to me, it's just uneven. I'm not saying that it's not fair. I'm not saying that the selectmen did the wrong thing, but I did say rather clearly that I think that that sort of thing needs to be mentioned by the budget committee. And it was mentioned in that spirit. It's not a political thing. I'm not running for office or anything. And since I am a member of the budget committee and I made that comment, I think I would like to have it in the minutes.
Well, I have to be honest with you, my opinion of minutes have always been a reflection of the actions of the committee, which I think we very accurately represent, not verbatim statements by an individual member as part of the minutes. I think by the fact that we acknowledged the fact that you had made a statement to that fact suffices. That's my opinion. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any other further discussion?
I think that it's not something for us to discuss because it's a cost of living increase. It's across the boards. Automatic cost of living, whether it's fair or not fair, that's the law, that's what it is. And in order to change anything about that, we'd have to, probably the selectmen or somebody would have to go back and say, well.
I move the question.
Okay, question has been moved. Those in favor of moving the question?
You want to vote on that?
Well, the question has been moved. Generally calls for a vote to move the question.
Sure.
No, I think you just take the vote.
Very well then.
I'll take back my move.
Okay then. If there's no further discussion, those in favor of the motion,
Of the amendment,
of the amendment to the motion, excuse me?
yes.
Aye, that's an aye. Those opposed? No? Okay, motion fails. Therefore, moving on to the original motion to accept the minutes as presented. Further discussion?
Hold on.
Does it
I don't think there
have
was
to
a
be
motion.
revoted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
I don't think anybody moved the minutes.
I thought
Gary
you-
jumped in
I'm sorry, I thought somebody, all right. We're back over
just
to
to
this
make sure.
moment. Those in favor of moving and of approving the minutes as presented, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor, aye. Those opposed?
Opposed?
And I will abstain because I was absent.
Very good. Thank you very much. I don't have any other comments this evening, so we move right into our CIP presentation. Amy, Jill, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for inviting us to your meeting. The Capital Improvement Program Committee, I chaired it this year. Barbara Madoff, who is here tonight, was the vice chair. Tom Young, who's in Florida now, was our secretary. David Carl, Guy Kite, Penny Hug, and Lori Hadley, representatives from the other boards. And we had a good process. A lot of things were submitted to us and a lot of background information given. The purpose, I'm sure you all know, of the Capital Improvements Program Committee is to develop a 10-year capital plan for the town of Tuckerborough, and to help promote long-range planning. The ideal is to even out the capital expenditures over the years so that they're sort of level and not spikes and troughs as we've had in the past. We recommend projects that we think are needed, and we believe this exercise helps the budgeting process, even though our report is done and things change after that with more information that comes forward. The process we think is still very worthwhile. If you look at page 7 of the report, you'll see the graph of the history of our capital expenses going back to 1991. That's the blue line. And then you'll see the projection of the capital capacity. The capital capacity is just what we think the town will bear for capital projects. So since 2007, when the first capital improvement programs report was done, it's pretty much evened out. There aren't as many spikes and troughs, although last year you'll see they go up quite a bit with the approval of the police station. If you look at page 24, that shows the list of all the projects. So that is the plan. That is the 10-year plan. There are 9 projects listed for 2022, and they total $1,540,000. The capital capacity you'll see below that on the bottom of the chart is only $974,000. So it's quite a bit over the capacity this year. However, we felt that they were worthwhile projects, and we felt that it wasn't that much over what was approved last year, which is the trend of more capital projects being approved. Last year it was $1,122,000. If it's determined by the Board of Selectmen that they need to propose a warrant article for more funds for the new police station, since the costs have skyrocketed, we do think that some of these will have to be pared back or moved out to another year. For instance, the paving, there's 2 paving articles totaling $500,000. Last year we approved $370,000, so it's quite an increase. So that's a place where perhaps something could be pared back. Things that maybe could be moved out a year, Union Wharf, if it doesn't get approved, the grant in right from the state, then obviously that can't happen. Maybe that could be split over 2 years or something to soften that blow, because that's a $245,000 project. It's a big project. The new plow truck possibly is another big project, $235,000. This is at the 7-year replacement cycle. Maybe we can get another year out of it. But apparently the resale value is high if you do it now. So that's the thought of putting it in the 2022 line. So I think it's pretty straightforward what's been presented and what we propose. We also recommend that the departments work together to meet their needs by sharing some equipment. Because we did have 2 requests for messaging signs, one from the fire department, one from the police department. We moved them both out this year because of the high cost of everything else. But you know, it's not ideal that they try to share things and know where they are and who's got them when they need them at any time. But you know, maybe something could be worked out to get a better deal on pricing of that. Because someday, I think those are things that we will need for emergency management and for police messaging. Their radar trailer, I believe, is on its last legs and can't be repaired now, so it will need to be replaced. The transfer station had asked for a truck and plow and sander, which we felt was a pretty high price to be paid for something that's only at a facility that's open part-time and basically would be used in the winter for plowing. So we recommend they work with the road agent to make sure their needs are met. And possibly the ATV that's listed on here for the fire rescue for this next year for $100,000, it's going to have a front-end loader on it, so it may be able to be used at the transfer station for some things that they might need equipment for. So there are things I think we need to make sure as a town to be efficient that we could possibly share between departments. Those are the only things I really wanted to point out. I just can answer any questions you have, but I think our recommendations are pretty straightforward on the page that gives the recommendations and also on the chart. Any questions? Yes.
When I'm looking at the number for the new dump truck for the highway department,
Right.
now, is lease purchasing out of favor now versus buying it outright?
We have only really done the lease purchasing on the things that were $800,000, the fire trucks and more. It certainly can be done, but we were trying to save interest in most of the projects by developing a capital reserve fund for them in
Yep.
advance and splitting it, which if you look down under the solid waste transfer station, the backhoe replacement, that was actually originally on the chart to be done this year also. But we thought if we split it into a capital reserve for 3 years, but made it specify that it could be for maintenance or replacement of the piece of equipment. That way, if it failed and we needed something done immediately, they could repair it with that money, or they could save for the something in the future. So we are looking to do more of that, and that is an area, certainly, you know, a loan for the truck, I think, could be something that, a way to split that cost up. We would not be opposed to it, I don't believe our committee. You'll look in the future, you'll see a couple of other, like the new, we are starting capital reserves for the fire trucks that are out starting in '29. And for engine, which one is that? Engine 2, because we'll be able to do a little bit every year for 10 years. And then engine 1 starts in '23, and we would be able to start collecting for that. However, engine 4, we didn't start early enough, the capital reserve for that, and it needs to be purchased in 2025. So we're gonna do a lease purchase there again. And it cost us, I think it was like $50,000 more in interest to do it, so.
Jill, you mentioned that the paving may be delayed if we run into problems in terms of funding.
Not delayed, but perhaps pared back.
Oh, pared back, okay. Was there any discussion to delaying or paring back? Well, maybe you can't do paring back, that would be applicable, but the Union Wharf bulkhead.
Right, that's the other one I mentioned.
Oh, you did, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I missed it, okay.
Yeah, if the, especially if the grant is right, it's not given by the state, obviously we can't do the project. But even if it is, depending on when it comes in, maybe we could split the cost over a couple of years.
Right.
That would be helpful. This is actually only for the piling part of it. It's not really the whole project. There still could be more
Yeah.
coming afterwards.
Is Melbourne Wharf faced with any emergency needs at this time?
Not emergency, but there are, I mean, we have, not only do we have Melbourne Wharf, we have Lake Street
Right.
to deal with, and that pushed that out to 2024. The 245 is actually the whole project.
That is the whole project? Okay.
My understanding of it.
Okay, I thought that was only the pilings.
Well, there's sheet piling, but just to get to that point of sheet piling requires the reconstruction of the base that is the wharf. So I haven't seen a number larger than that, so. I don't know
On
what
these estimates that are out several years or more, so they could be completely meaningless the way
That's
things
true.
are going right now. you
Yeah.
know?
But they're better than nothing. So a lot of things, they've been submitted to us purely as a placeholder. We really don't have an idea how much something will cost. But if we put something on there, just to sort of show that it's being planned, it's being thought about. Both the fire department and the police department were very good about looking out to the future. The fire department, if you look under public safety facilities, mentioned fire station renovations, and that's way out in the last year of our plan. And we just, the comment says very rough estimate, $300,000. But they say with the growth of the town, they see, happening now and going out 10 years, they might need to have 24-hour fire people, and then they need to have sleeping quarters, so they'd have to renovate. So that was, forethought, but we really don't know how much it would cost. And the police, with the whole body cam thing, whether that would be mandated or not, or, and then they said they need extra staffing though to have it, so that got bumped out because the staffing was determined that they wouldn't be able to get that now. But the software system under that police department, we put 25,000 out in 2026. That's only necessary if the county changes their system, because we're tied in with the county. So again, it's a rough estimate. We don't know whether it's going to happen or when, but at least it's on the radar.
Yeah, because you really don't know what the population's gonna do, what this is gonna do. And I sometimes feel that we're paying for stuff now that we may not be here by the time it comes around. And if the population has gone up as much as you take into account here, that perhaps the people that are here then should pay for those.
So in other words, you're opposed to a capital reserve fund?
I just think it's way too much to put up front every year and every year and every year. And
The things we have capital reserves for now are only things that we have already purchased and replaced.
What about ambulance two? No.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
Ambulance two, that's an additional ambulance. That's not something we already have.
Exactly, and that, we discussed that at our meeting, that whether to set up a capital reserve fund without it ever being approved, that we want one, we need one, or if that's the way to go, would be, it's a lot of discussion involved in whether we want to go that way, of making sure that town meeting knows when they start approving the capital reserve fund, that they are basically approving the idea of the project. However, if they vote not to keep funding that project, that money will go back to the general fund, so it's not like we're losing it
No,
as a town.
I understand that. It's just, I think there needs to be a little more thought into some of this.
But just to be clear, that a second ambulance has not been presented to the selectmen.
Thank you.
I just think that sometimes it feels like we're getting the best of everything all the time. Instead of, there's a lot of towns around that get by with far, far less and keep equipment for far, far longer. And I just,
And tax their residents far, far higher.
yeah, well, it's just one of those things that, $100,000 ATV is kind of mind-boggling to me.
Well, and the question came up, not to make this a conversation, but the question came up of leasing and financing versus purchasing. And a lot of what you see in equipment from, let's say, Ossipee or surrounding towns is financed equipment. So you're not looking at the gross dollar in 1 year. For instance, we're looking at a $200,000 snowplow truck, which may or may not happen this year, but we're just buying it. It's much easier to run a CIP report if your payment's $23,000 a year, as opposed to $230,000  1 year. So it's just a different way of approaching it. The more debt you load onto the town, the less manageable, I think, your CIP is, because you don't have any place to move without increasing taxes dramatically. I mean, our job as selectmen is to try to keep the total warrant article expense somewhere in the range of $900,000 or $1 million. If we do that, that flattens the tax to where it has been for the last 3 or 4 years. We're gonna have a 4.6% increase in the CIP, or in the cost of living, the COLA. But I think overall, the budget needs to look a lot like it did last year. So I think the CIP's done an admirable job, but I think a lot of this is just gonna move around. But, and back to your statement about capital reserves, I mean, we've all agreed on the Board of Selectmen that we need to get into that now. Once the police facility is out of the way, we really don't have any major capital projects. So we need to start putting money aside for loaders at the transfer station and fire apparatus. So we're not sitting on long-term debt, and we're not sitting on a one-time purchase that's enormous. So the figures going forward, I'm ranting, but the figures going forward are going to change, I think, from my perspective, to reflect that philosophy, if you will.
Anybody else?
Thank you very much. As always, we commend you all for your time. This is really a wonderful, wonderful document for us to look at, because failure to plan is planned to fail, as they say.
That's right.
You did a great job.
You guys have a hard job. Thank you.
Thank
Joe?
you.
Joe? Yeah, I've got mine now.
You got one?
You need something.
You never know.
You got things well in hand.
Moving on then to our budget reviews for the evening. First one is 4324, solid waste. Chris? I guess the first question certainly I have is, looking for another employee for next year?
Yes.
Well, as you remember, last year we asked the town whether or not they wanted to recycle paper. So the vote was affirmative that they did want to recycle paper. In order to do that, it's going to require another employee.
I'm a little hazy about what the new employee does and why we need such. Could you just kind of explain the operation of recycling and why it is that another person can do it?
Well, I'm thinking in the terms of paper coming in. Right now, we're doing the compactors, we're doing the other recycling, the cardboard, the tin cans, the metal, all the other stuff. With the paper coming in, we're going to have to keep that paper from being contaminated. So the intention is to have paper come into the transfer station and have the people drop it on the table like they do cardboard. Then we'll have to have employees take the paper and make sure it stays clean. Because if the paper doesn't stay clean, when I say clean, I mean not get mixed. If the paper gets mixed, it doesn't stay, you know, if cardboard paper gets contaminated with cardboard, or if a piece of plastic gets mixed in with the paper, we lose all value.
Right.
So it needs to stay, you know, office paper, you know, cereal boxes, newspaper, that needs to be just what's in the recycling. And they can put that in the containers for mailing. Basically, that's what that employee would do.
So this person would be stationed at the repository for the paper.
Right.
And basically, be the insurance to make sure that the paper stays clean and that it's sorted correctly and that nothing else is slipped in there.
Right, and one of the employees would be doing that, and probably the cardboard. They would be in a rotation, basically be assigned for that.
Okay.
Duty.
Has there been any thought that perhaps paper recycling can just be done on a certain day, and then that way a per diem employee would only be required on that day? And that day could be like maybe one day a month or one day every 2 weeks?
I think that would be something that would have to be learned, that would have to be a learned skill for townspeople.
No, that's true.
And that's something that we have to be put out there, and it's, I think anything's possible. We're not, you know, we're not mandatory recycling, and
Right.
it's hard to get anybody to.
Well, the only reason why I mention it is that I think on any given day, almost all of the things that get brought to the recycling center are pretty much an even flow. But there are a couple of things that if we went on a restricted schedule of some sort, that I think would fit in with the general public needs. And one of them I thought might be this recycling of paper. That's why I'm raising the issue. I think the town does want recycling, and one of the things that I'm keenly aware of is that people in the town want something, but a lot of times it's really not a very realistic want. I mean, the expense can be disproportionate relative to a lot of other things that we provide. So I just thought that this might be a suggested way that we could maybe get the cost of recycling paper to come down just a little bit. So in other words, as an example, recycling of paper could be available weekends only, or perhaps every other weekend, or that type of thing, as opposed to Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I'm not sure that we need something there, or that we should be accepting paper those days. So it's a thought, because the total kick for all of this is about $30,000, right?
Yeah,
And that doesn't change if you do it.
Well, the employees don't be there.
It's not really the employee you still have the capital expense.
Yeah, I know, we gotta do that
So
too.
if you're gonna put together the capital expense for the equipment, then you need to maximize that as much as you can with the population of a couple of
the
thousand.
capital expense really isn't going to change. It's a one-time shot. The employee expense is going to be the recurring expense.
I mean, we may modify Gary's proposal to be accumulating paper without that per diem, and then bring the per diem in for a solid day of work.
That's an idea.
I mean, there's any number of ways to modify how that person works. I'm not saying that's a workable solution, Chris. I'm just saying, who knows how the paper flow is going to go.
If we once we start opening up the place to recycle paper, we're going to have lots of paper.
Oh, let's hope.
Well, and we will. So we're going to need to have something in place to take care of it.
Do you have, out of curiosity, have any idea what your the kind of paper that's coming in now, or is it just, that's all going in mixed?
Well, I mean, I have rough ideas, probably somewhere in the area of 30 tons,
Sorry, how much?
probably 30 tons, 50 tons.
Okay, so,
Probably 30, I would say 30 tons.
Yeah, next year, at this time, would be a whole lot easier
Yeah,
to
I'm
estimate.
guessing 30.
so in other words, so the revenue from the paper should cover the cost of the bailiff. Am I correct? No
No,
assumption?
no,
I'm
paper's
not,
not-
I'm
paper's
not
not
sure it
good.
will,
No,
but it will cover some of the costs.
some of it, yes.
No, the capital cost, not the employee cost, but the cost, because we have to buy a bailiff, correct?
Right. It may cover the bailiff,
Right.
but not, but the paper's not very good on paper right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, trying to amortize that debt over 1 year, and that might be a little bit of a stretch.
I'm just looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
So.
Any idea what percentage of people separate and recycle their paper? How do you ever determine that?
Well, nobody does right now because we don't suffer. But the people that want to,
Yeah, it's not gonna be mandatory.
no.
No, it's still gonna be, if you want a picture and come back and go right ahead.
I think it would be worth a try to have a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they're mandatory is a double-edged sword. I mean, you talk about separating for cleanliness, because you gotta have paper that you can actually market. And then you should make it mandatory. You might as well hire 10 people to try to sort
Right.
through it to clean it up so that you actually have a recyclable product.
I could,
You know, I don't expect that, I have no idea, but this issue may come back before the town. If it's totally out of the range of reasonability as far as cost is concerned. But it came before the town last year, they want to try recycling paper.
Is it possible we'd get activity from surrounding towns that don't have, and that it could build up enough where monies could be made by having the attraction?
You know, that's an area that we haven't looked at. I'm sure we can. Kind of like the hazardous waste thing, where it was become a facility. But, I mean, that carries its own burdens. I mean, now you've got people coming into the solid waste facility that are not residents. What else are they dropping off? You know, you have a hard enough time monitoring the C and D, let alone, you know, household waste.
I have a question. So, and I need to know the background behind this, because last year, the supervisor position paid a certain dollar per hour, and this year, the supervisor position is paying a lot more per hour. Why is that? How did that come about? And please explain. Because even though you're asking for more money for less money, it's based on a 26-hour position, not on a 35-hour position.
It's $6,000 less money. And you're asking whether or not
Well,
it's a full-time position? It is a full-time position.
according to the 2022, the 2022 proposed personnel budget, it's one number, and in 2021, it was another number. I just would like to know why there's such a jump in the rate per hour.
Is that in the packet?
Nope.
I hate to get blanks.
No, But I got these
You know, I know
numbers.
it was negotiated salary, I know that much.
It was a negotiated salary, and why, what's the background behind the negotiated salary? I mean, it's a jump from $29.50 an hour to $40.58 an hour.
No, that's not right.
Are you referring to the 65,000 right here? This is a drop.
I know, but it's based on this many hours. Last year, it was based.
Chris, how, you are a full-time employee?
Yeah, I don't
So it's
know.
36
35,
hours.
this is 35
So
hours.
it's a 4 more hours.
No, what I'm saying is that,
Okay, I didn't get this.
no, I know, you did. I'm just saying, I just would like to know what the rate, it's a 26-hour position or is it a 36-hour
That's a
position?
35-hour-a-week job.
It's 35 an hour a week
Or, right, yeah,
position
it's
for
full-time.
2022.
It's not 22 hours.
For
No,
the
for
year
the year
2022, I'm sorry.
Right. No, it was a full-time job even when Clay had it. We were paying full-time with benefits for Clay, we were paying full-time with benefits with Chris. He's getting less per hour than Clay did. So I'm not certain we're the,
The budget you're asking for is $54,865, correct?
54,865.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so Chris is going to be working 36 hours a week.
Okay,
Is he?
and that's my hope. I mean, I can get his employment agreement out, but not right here.
No, I know. I'm just saying, the numbers on the 2022 personnel administration versus the 2021 personnel administration. You're right, last year, it was 36 plus hours for the rate. This year, for the proposed 2022, it matches the number that Chris and you guys have approved.
Right.
It's based on 26 hours versus 36 hours from 2021. That's why I'm asking the question. On the personnel, it says it's going to be for 26 hours.
Hold on. When Chris started, refresh my memory, Chris, you had a retirement issue that you needed to accommodate. So it's written for 26 hours so that Christopher doesn't lose his retirement from the state police. But the pay is based on 35 hours. How do we resolve that? And maybe we-
Because it comes up to $40.58 an hour.
And it isn't. So maybe what we need to do is have you come into a non-public. Because I really can't do this with a camera.
No,
on.
and that's fine.
But, yeah, there was a series of events that happened when we took Chris on that required that his contract not reflect any more than a certain number of hours.
Well, you're absolutely right. If you want, we do have the right to go to non-public session if you want to talk about this after the fact.
Yeah. I just, we can't do it right here.
Oh, no, no, no.
That's
I
what
don't
I'm
have this stuff with me, but I'd be happy to. have
I'm
it
just
done.
asking the background, that's why I was asking the question. I'm asking
Right.
for the background on this, because you're right, it's a reduction, but
Right, and it is less money than we're paying for the same amount of work, but it's not described well in what you're reading. And maybe what we need to do is have it come in. And I'd be more than happy to walk through that.
I have I'm looking at the knives and the 22 requests from the selectmen, the 22 requests from Chris, and all the disposal lines. You rolled back a little bit.
A little bit, yes.
Was there a reason for that?
We discussed with the selectmen and a couple of the line items, I didn't spend quite everything.
Yeah.
And it was due to the fact that we were able to just save a little bit.
Okay.
Some of the things that went a little bit over on, but some of the things I saved on, and was just able to pinch a heat hanging, so the other one got cut back a little bit. But some of the items I needed to, keep in line for next year, because I knew next year was gonna need it, so.
In Chris's defense, we asked him to construct this early, right after the third quarter. And you need all the information you can get.
We did this in October.
Have you bought any fuel or propane at all this year, or is that?
We did, there should be an update here. We filled up the fuel tank.
Because our numbers show that you haven't spent anything.
We filled up the fuel tank, we filled up the propane, I don't know why it's not the truck this year.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to be tabling this?
Sorry?
Are we going to be tabling this?
Well, I guess that's gonna be at the request of the committee, decision to make.
Well, I for one, I'm looking at what has been presented, and I don't see the same questions that Chris is raising, but she's looking at other documents, so I'm going to go along anyway, whichever way, as far as tabling. But I just wanted to add that if it is going to be tabled, that I wonder if we could just explore the option, during the time that it's tabled, about the slight limitation on the availability of recycling paper waste. The salary request for that particular person is not insignificant, and half of that or a third of that.
Well, that's the only thing that we can discuss in non-public in the first motion. You can't, if you want to talk about the paper, that has to be done now.
Yeah, right.
Okay, just to color this a little differently, you're looking at a $34,000 increase year to year.
Yeah.
We're gonna continue to pay Chris Rule what we negotiated for his salary, regardless of what you put on there for a number.
I don't have any problem
And
with
we're
salary
gonna
figures.
do paper recycling, and that's gonna require another person.
Yeah.
So you can zero out the recycling assistant for $22,000, and you can cut Chris's salary to 20 grand. That's fine. We're still gonna operate the transfer station the way it needs to be operated. Not to be too-
Well, I personally want the recycling. I'm just trying to soften the price, that's all.
And so are we.
Okay.
I think we're not looking to just,
I just would like to say that perhaps we have to, even though it was thought that about last year, there's not enough data right now for us to get all the information that we're asking for. And perhaps by budget time next year, that data will have accumulated and we can make a more reasonable approach to the value of doing paper recycling. Are we making money on it? What are the true costs for it? I don't think we have enough of that information now to address it fully.
and you won't get that information without trying.
That's right.
Right.
So you need the budget,
Mhm.
and that's what we've presented.
And you present a
If
budget.
next year you look at it and you say, Jesus, that's a foolish thing to do. I mean, we'll probably already have said that amongst ourselves as selectmen and not present
That's right.
that.
But we have to have the data
Right.
to make the decision.
Right. I don't think to Gary's point, I don't think we're burying ourselves in this morass with no exit possibility.
All right.
In fact, Chris has looked at used balers for what, $7,000,
About $7,800 for
$7,800
factory
to try to mitigate
That's
the
right.
capital expense.
But you have to have all that data to make an informed decision. I realize.
Yeah, we're not going in, full bore with a
Right.
$50,000 baler and all the rest of it. We're trying to keep the capital expense somewhere in the $15,000 range. And the obviously the labor expense is a fungible item. I mean, if it's not working out in June or August.
You'll know it,
He doesn't need to come to work.
right.
You know, we're not obligated to keep that person working. So
That's right. Yeah.
that's a movable target.
Mhm.
And if our capital costs aren't that great, then maybe we're trying to mitigate the risk.
And we're listening to our voters and what they.
Right, no, we have to do something.
Right?
You know,
Well, I agree, we have to listen to our voters, but sometimes after you've done something for the voters, you realize that the cost is not effective.
Right.
And then you have to go back to the voters and say, this is what it costs, it's this expensive. Are you going to, do you want us to continue it, or would you rather,
And you may find yourself in a situation where the voting population wants to do it regardless of the
That's right.
cost.
Mhm.
At which
and
point,
if that happens, then we'll know that too.
I think there's a little bit of that going on.
I think there's a lot of it going on, but
I think you also have to take into account that was voted on at town meeting last year.
I
by
understand.
50 people, or
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. If people don't come to town meeting, they don't vote, that's not our problem.
Mhm.
I'm just saying.
We can't manage our town based upon the premise that not enough people voted at town meeting.
It's just the way it is.
Can't work,
Yeah, no, I know there's
Nothing you
nothing
can
to
do
do
about
about it,
yeah.
but it starts costing all the townspeople money.
Then they'll show up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
show 'em.
I don't know if they ever will. I think the town meeting, I think it's done. You know, as an effective body, I think it's done.
It is the only
I
form of
hate the thought
democracy
of
left.
that, but it's just, there's not enough people and too many things can get hijacked at the meeting.
Start giving away hot dogs.
There we go.
Well, are we comfortable dealing with this evening?
I am.
I am.
I'm fine with it.
Mr. Moser.
I make a
Just to-
motion, oh, I'm sorry.
Just to clarify for Chris's purposes, if there is a significant mistake on that line that we just talked about on the salary line, and we discover that during non-public, it's not as if we're not going to adjust it. I mean, this is budget number versus actual expense number. There, I'm sorry.
All right, I make a motion on budget 4324 in the amount of $488,840 that the budget committee approve this amount.
I second that.
It has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? No comment, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris, you want to take it back and recycle it?
You sign it.
Well, numbers on the side, check whether the appropriation policy is going.
I'm sorry?
Those numbers on the side.
All right, next item is financial administration, 4150.
Well,
Yeah. Oh, good. So this is all. Yeah. I apologize.
Pardon?
I apologize. I had asked Chris to do further expansion on the spreadsheet with us to include the year before.
Okay.
So he just noticed it.
Did the tax collector not buy any equipment this year? On 4150, 40,
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I don't think that she has actually. I don't know how
I was getting there when I see dollars budgeted for next year, but nothing was spent this year. like an ad hoc committee secretary position.
Yeah, tax collectors supplies, tax collectors postage is, no, that's the supplies is not close. But we're just starting the second half of the tax season, so I'm sure a lot of what the costs are going to be reflected at the end of December.
They just haven't been submitted at this point?
Well, she's in the process of collecting the tax, she sent out the tax
Right.
bills, and I think the budget that we've got is somewhere at the end of November.
Can you explain this ad hoc committee position, secretary position? I mean, we're not talking a lot of money, but I'm just curious as to what that committee is, and what it's doing. I mean, you spent no money on that position over the last 2 years.
Yeah, we had, I know over 2 years ago, we talked about bringing in secretarial help for different areas of the departments, whether it's the tax collector or the finance department or even the town clerk. And we haven't been able to locate the right candidate for that job, if you will. There were a number of reasons why we wanted to do it. One was to get some of the clerical work done that just sits around sometimes. But the other was to try to bring a little youth into the office, because at some point in time, our employees are going to age out and need somebody that's a little familiar with town government and the operations that go on in town government. We haven't been successful in locating the right person or locating any person to do that. I don't think we're alone in having trouble finding employees, but it is for all intents and purposes a volunteer job. I'm really budgeted $1,000 for that.
It would be more of a roaming type of
Yeah,
secretary.
answer the phone when somebody's on vacation. You know,
Fill in.
yeah, filing, you know, that sort of thing.
The computer and maintenance and IT, is that just going up because of the software programs?
Right, that's going up because of the software programs and the annual
Subscriptions?
subscriptions, that's a word, right? Right.
And it's a pretty hefty jump, big grant.
Yeah, it did, and we've got we didn't include the detail for you, but it was a significant jump, but we changed we had to change one of the software programs to accommodate for DRA requirements, and we also had to increase our security based upon other towns and our computer software people's recommendation that we increase our security.
I mean, between the two lines, it's 10 grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious is if, you know, this just goes, to me, I'm just, you know, I understand you have to do certain programs, especially for DRA requirements and all that, man, I
Right.
understand that philosophy 100%. But, you know, is there any quote-unquote shopping on the other stuff?
No, and we did shop, believe it or not. I think, I hate to bring this up before the budget committee, but part of the issue that you're staring at right here is paying for 22's costs in 21. And we did that last year as well. I've been battling with the accounting department about posting expenses for the year that they're expended for, as opposed to, if you have a bill that comes due in November, but it's for everything in 2022, it's not part of 2021's budget, it's part of 2022.
Accrual versus cash, yes.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we can't be accrual because we're a town government. So that's kind of an ongoing issue that we're working But the increases that you see here are based upon quotes, and we did get quotes from 2 or 3 different computer software companies. Our computer support people are on a 3-year contract, so they're staying the same. And that's a marginal increase, percentage increase annually. But the hardware, or not the hardware, but the software goods will change. And we tried to mitigate that with other budgetary maneuvers that were reasonably prudent. And the long and the short of it is we're $14,000 higher this year, $13,000 higher.
And 10 of it's software and computer.
I'm sorry?
And 10 of it's software and computer, so that's pretty self-explanatory.
I mean, I'd be happy to have volunteer members get involved in this. I very rarely answer my emails, let alone actually use the computer. So if you have a specific knowledge in business software, like you I'm sure do, is to come in, volunteer. We'll put a committee together and take a look at what we might do differently. Because it was $30,000 last year, $30,000 this year. I'm not a computer person, so it sounds like a lot of money, but in the larger scheme of things, it's the same as it was. So I don't have the ability to battle.
Don't admit, I'm a lot of
I'm just
Yeah,
saying, all these things
remote
add up.
television.
And all I'm pointing out is all this stuff just adds up, and then suddenly it's not here now, it's up here, and it's just that's all it is. Just me pointing it out, just asking questions, need the background.
You gotta just keep going up too, because whatever they say, this is what you need, I mean, what do you
Well,
say?
yeah, I mean, but it gets to the problem of looking at line items as opposed to the macro issues, and which is the only way you can really look at these budgets. Unless a line item is totally out of whack. And the only way I would know that this is out of whack is if you told me it was, by looking at it. Because I don't have the knowledge to look at that specific line item. I'll look at the total budget, and if we're looking at a $13,000 increase year to year, what is it? How much is it? On a $150,000 budget, I see that as a manageable number. And then look at the whole budget, we're looking at 4.5% increase. That's about what I expected to happen. If it were 10% increase on the whole budget, then we gotta look at everything. But just to end my colloquy here, I'd be more than happy for any more information on this particular, or anything in the budget that you might be able to bring to the table. It makes our life easier. I'd rather not argue here. I'd rather argue with Mr. Marcus and Mr. Pike.
I make a motion that we approve financial administration number 4150 and the amount of, let's see if I can get the right page here. It's $168,321.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Very well, those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. Next is library.
Is Dennis coming in?
No, Dennis had a previous commitment. He couldn't break, so I'm here to speak for anything that any questions that you have. At our last meeting, there was brought up the fact that the way the budget is presented for the library is convoluted at best because it is a quasi-public-private operation, and that people want to see, or members of the committee want to see, what our track was in spending. So you'll see that we have kind of a spreadsheet to show what our expenses are. Keep in mind that the town does not pay the expenses for the library. We get a bill from the electric company, we pay it. Okay? And also keep in mind that a certain portion of our budget every year by RSA has to come in as private money. So if you look at that spreadsheet, you'll see what our total expenses were, and you'll see there's a line that says paid from town funds. Those are the actual dollars that were sent to the library from the town on non-salaried items every year. Then you'll also see out of our total expenses what we paid from our other non-town funds. You'll also see a line that shows our total income over a 5-year period. Once again, money received from the town and money received from non-town funds. So, in the process of doing all of this, and looking at our 5-year history, it became apparent to me, to the rest of the trustees of the library, that we've had a, for lack of a better word, an equity creep, all right, in that because we don't know on an ongoing basis every year how much money we're going to be getting in donated funds, we budget for what we think we're going to need. Then over the course of the last few years, because of COVID, because of changes in our scheduling and what we're going to be able to do for programming and things like that, during the period of COVID and certainly during the period of our construction, when everything was turned upside down when we were doing the addition, we end up in a situation we have a lot more cash than we feel comfortable that we have. And whereas it's, as a chairman, I don't ever like to make motions, but in this case, this evening, I would like to propose a motion to this budget that we lower the requested amount by $15,000.
I'll second.
All right, now, for purposes of discussion, let me get my notes here. You know, our heating, you know, if you looked at this table that we brought up to you, for example, how we end up with this much cash. Well, for example, you know, $3,700 worth of heating expense in our 2019 budget actually came out of the building fund. Okay, so that's why that line item would have been down for 2019 versus other years.
But that's a one-time.
That's a one-time deal.
Right.
The point of the matter is that we feel as trustees that with our cash on hand that we have now, and even with a lowered amount, we'll certainly be able to, and not knowing in 2022 what the world is going to be like as far as what we put in for line items, for public programs and things like that, which we certainly have had a curtail in 2020 and 2021. We feel that we'll have, even with the $15,000 reduction, we'll have enough money on hand certainly to run the libraries that should be run.
And that I will concur, because we went back and we went back 5 years.
Yeah.
And it been in a surplus of between $17,000 and $18,000. So by lowering your proposed, I'm just saying it's a 33. When I came, last time, I was like, wow, that's a $33,000 increase. Why? How come? Kind of thing. Even if you reduce that by 15, you're still potentially going to end up with $17K.
Once again, depending
I
on
know,
how we get
right,
our
but I'm just
donated
saying
money.
that's historically speaking, so you should still be okay.
Well, what we're going to do is, as part of some of the discussion, is that we are now going to look at our cash position prior to our budget season, and to not only say what we expect our expenses to be, but what our on-hand cash is going to be, factoring in what we anticipate in donated money over the course of the year.
So your proposal or your motion is gonna change the library budget to $52,175,
$52,175.
and then a total budget of $216,662.
Yes.
And that's been seconded.
Does the committee understand what we're trying to accomplish here? The trustees also want me to point out to them that this is a reduction for this year. We cannot guarantee we're going to have the same reduction next year, so there's...
So I wonder how efficacious it is to do one-time reductions and then jump it back up in a year.
But the fact of the matter is, based on historical, it's not going to. It's only going to go its regular increment because this was such a high jump compared to the other.
Okay, so we're looking at a $15,000 jump in '23. That would be my concern.
No, we're not necessarily looking at a 15,000. What we're doing is we want to take a look and see where we are.
Okay.
I mean, we have a pretty good idea what it's going to cost to run the library.
Yeah.
You know, the big expenses, even with the new addition, our maintenance has gone up a little bit because, you know, there's more cleaning to do. Certainly our heat and our light went up because it's a bigger building. But as far as what we're doing for collection development and the program costs and postage and all the other individual line items, right, we have a pretty good idea what it's going to cost us. So by looking at this, you know, in the 1st of October or, you know, middle of September of 2022,
Right.
we'll have a much better idea. Yeah. We were discussing, it's little things like, for when we're doing collections, all right? Buying DVDs, because we have a huge DVD library that gets, you know, people borrow them all the time. It's amazing how many new movies are not even bothering to put them on a DVD now, because they've all been streamed.
Yeah.
And so they will not even bother to stamp out a DVD. So that's an avenue of something that we, you know, that we might not be spending much money on. Okay. You know, we want to do. We're never going to let our collection degrade, and but it's just different ways of spending the money.
Yeah, 2/3 of your operating budget is your off. So
Exactly.
that's not changing.
Exactly.
Right.
So.
Got it.
So there's been a motion on the floor and seconded to change the total for the library budget for next year to $216,662. Any further discussion? Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. And trustees, thank you, because you did. We are anxious to do the right thing as well. Okay, the last one we have is a revisit on our insurance number, which I think is a little bit more good news, right, Chip?
I'm sorry?
We have a little bit more good news on the insurance front.
This is the workers' compensation, property casualty, and insurance deductible. Do you know something?
We had voted on this already.
We did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it passed, it's 78,050. 76, I know, 78,050.
So
And this is 76.
it's a reduction because as I'm given to understand, it's a change from Primex and what our workers' compensation rates are going to be.
Right.
So we had already approved $78,050, and the new number as presented is $76,737.
Right. And that's based on a reduction in our workers' compensation contribution.
So do we have a motion to that effect?
I move we approve the budget 4196 insurance in the amount of $76,737.
Would you be willing to add to reflect the new numbers provided?
Yes, new number, yeah, subject to the new numbers that were provided.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Well, that takes everything that we needed to talk about the budget reviews this evening. There's no correspondence from the outside world. Chip?
All right, I think we only have one budget left.
Personnel administration? I think it's on one
Personnel
slide.
administration, I think we submitted that to the budget committee because we voted on that. So you should have, all of you should have a copy of that.
No, that hasn't come out. We don't have it.
Okay, then I'll make sure that you do.
Yeah, no, well, we schedule this for, our next meeting is scheduled for December 28th.
Right.
And I was hoping that we'd be able to do personal administration to start the evening and then start going through a first reading of any proposed warrant articles.
Right. And that's our intention as well. We're gonna start looking at the warrant articles on Monday. And looking at the, just to preface that, I think we have voted on personnel administration because I was looking at the total budget for 2022 and doing the numbers, and it appears to be about 4.5% higher year to year. But that's 15,000 from the library, so we'll all get adjusted a little bit, but we should have a better feel for that on the 28th. Looking at the CIP recommendations versus what we've been talking about as selectmen, and I'm just one, but I'm reporting back to you. Our intention is to do the Union Wharf project. Paving of the major through roads and paving of the neighborhood roads is projected at $500,000, but that's not cast in stone. We have to make our payment on the fire engine. I'm not sure this rescue sled ATV trailer is in the cards. We haven't been presented with that. And
Do we have one of those now?
they've got a lot of stuff,
I know that.
but they also get a lot of donations. So it isn't as if, I mean, Adam, the chief, hasn't brought this before us. So
Oh, okay.
my expectation was, and still is, that all these wants needed to be brought forward in October, early November, so that we've got some idea what's going on. I mean, if we move forward from there, we've already talked to the road agent about paving the highway garage area, but that's premised upon regrading because now it's running into the building. So, but it's also premised upon the cell phone tower, which is going to go in the spring. So there's going to be construction going on up there, and we're certainly not going to pave if there's construction going on. And maybe that becomes part of that program. They've got $235,000 for a 10-wheel dump truck. as an old truck owner, I'm uncomfortable with the 235,000. I've already talked to the road agent about, we need to get this thing out for bids. We may not, I don't know, if we haven't decided, but I don't know that we're married to the idea of buying a truck in 2022. I'm not, but we'll see. Thankfully, the police departments brought their request down to one cruiser from 2 cruisers, but there again, we haven't, every time we buy a cruiser for the police department, it takes them 12 months to get it into service. So we need to have a longer discussion about that, and also needs. He's been down a couple of officers, he's still down 1 officer currently. What are the needs? I'm not saying that that officer or any officer is going to be out forever, but we need to manage our needs on that end of things. The fire station we have to pay for, we have talked about creating capital reserve accounts for both the fire engine replacement, because this is the last year we're paying for the fire engine, and we're gonna have to buy another one at some point, and also the backhoe at the transfer station. So major equipment costs, we'd like to get into a habit of having $50,000 capital reserves going in annually, as opposed to just one big chunk happening. The long and the short of it is, I was just doing the back of the envelope stuff here, but they're showing it at us at $1,540,000. I'm showing us with a $500,000 over capacity. If you back out some of these numbers, we can get that down to closer to 900,000, and that's where we were last year. I think that's where we need to. That, my personal opinion is that's around the area we need to stay. We have been given a price on the police department that would be $240,000 more than we have in the bank. We've just started the process of dissecting the program for the building program. So we haven't set that up for bid. That's an estimate. So we'll try to lower that number. There's also additional money out there in Homeland Security money and other infrastructure money that we're actively looking to get into. But that said, our intention is to get the police department built in 2022. So if that number drives some of this other stuff off the list, then it's going to drive some of this other stuff off the list. We need to get that done. It's the last of the major capital projects that we've got in town. And then it really frees up our ability to do a reconstruction on Tuftonboro Neck Road, for instance, which needs to happen. A solar installation at the transfer station that should happen. We'd like a solar installation, you and I chatted about it, at the police station, and large enough so we could have public charging, not for free, but so you could put them down and turn into charge a car.
Would you be also moving to electric vehicles for the police department?
We haven't
There's a
talked.
grant for it.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that, and I don't know that. I guess from a small town perspective, I'm looking at, okay, how did it work out next door? They've gotten some electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
We're a little different as far as our highway makeup is concerned, and our population makeup, where they're located. So it may be a bit of a struggle, and just the politic of running a police chief is, you know, they're hard to get rid of and they're hard to convince. So you're always working against that at some point. And we haven't broached the subject of elected vehicles for the police department, but it's inevitable.
Mhm.
You know, like, it's, I was mentioning, I don't know if I mentioned it to you or not, but my brother-in-law, who's Scottish, lives in Inverness half the year. 85% of the electricity created in Scotland is now wind and solar. And all of their ferries, with the exception of a couple of small ones, are all running on hydrogen created by wind energy. So they're up in the North Sea where it's cloudy and cold, and they can do it. I don't know why we can't do it. And I think it's inevitable. It'll,
Yeah, they got the North Sea going for them too.
that's where they get all their money. But, and we're, you know, waiting to see what sort of federal money might happen. That's going. Everything we have currently, 19 Mile Pier, Tuckborough Neck Road, for instance, those are all shovel-ready projects, a term of art. So if there were infrastructure money or federal money available only for shovel-ready projects, we've got, well, even Leisure is another shovel-ready project that we've got. So we have a number of them sitting there, but they're multi-million-dollar projects, so we need to figure out how to accomplish it. But I'm hoping, I don't know how it will make out, but I know we need to get the warrant articles to you this month. That's our goal.
I can see it.
There's gonna be something that happens in January, there always is. But we'd like to get them.
Well, I'd like to have the first reading in December,
Right.
and then have a meeting in January, so that we can wrap everything up and have our public hearing, the first week of February, which is historically we've always had, so.
Yeah. Oh, and on the 2021 budget, I mean, I was looking at the highway budget because Jim was in last Monday. He's got $115,000 left there. I don't think there's going to be $115,000 for the snowstorm between now and the first of the year. So this may be the first year in a number of years that we're really looking at some surpluses coming out of that budget and a couple of other ones. The fire department ran into some mechanical problems, but I think we're going to have the ability a year from October, next October, to plug some money into the taxes and start to moderate this library, police station, big spending things that we've done over the last couple of years. But keep the tax level right about where it is currently, and maybe even a little lower. That's it for me.
Okay. Anything else from any other committee members?
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
There you go.
Okay, before we do
sorry.
that motion. Now, do you want to have an executive, non-public session?
What's that?
Do you want to have a non-public discussion to talk about?
Well, at a different time.
Okay, well, that's my point. I don't have the RSAs with me tonight to even know how to go into one.
Is that, I'm not sure it would be informative because I don't have what you need in front of me.
Okay, that's
No,
fine.
I would approach this like one on a different time.
Very good.
How does that sound?
That's fine. All right, so now we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And second, it goes in favor, aye?
All right.
Aye.